philosophical lecture shorts, and this is the second part of the Nietzsche lecture that I was giving. We talked about in the last one about his critique or diagnosis of the Western culture, and now what we're going to talk about is the turn. Okay, when he's trying to give a suggestion, or as he calls in Beyond Good and Evil, a prelude to a philosophy of the future. Remember, a prelude is the intro piece of a piece of music, a composition, that just kind of signals in the main part. So he's just trying to signal in where we were going. It doesn't necessarily mean, he's not trying to say this is exactly how it has to be, because he still understands himself as within a tradition of transcendence as well, even though he's trying to break it. Okay? What he says, though, eventually is the age of nihilism will eventually begin to turn on itself, and then we'll see the last man eventually disappear. And what he means by the last man is basically man is the modern man, the man with a capital M, the way we used to think of ourselves. This will begin to disappear, and a new person will begin to show up on a scene. Someone he calls the Übermensch. Now, we do not usually transliterate it, okay, because what it really literally means in German is Superman, okay, and we don't do it because of the comic book Superman. So we just leave it as it is. And basically what the Übermensch is an octave, okay, above the average person. Okay? Somehow he goes beyond the person, the people who were before us. And what he basically says, the Übermensch understands that value has never came from transcendence. And what he does is creates a transvaluation of all values. And what the Übermensch understands is that value is never something that had to come from some higher being or from some outside source. But value has always, and does now and it always has been, come from within, from the will of the human being. Value is created by who? By us. Not some God, but the human being. By willing certain things into being, we create value. And it really is valuable. So value comes from the will of humanity. Okay? It has always been us who creates it. I am the one who decides by willing it into power, as he claims it. I will ideas into power because those are what I believe. And my creation of them and saying this is what is meaningful to me, or this is what is meaningful to me, or this is, makes it truly meaningful. We don't need some higher power to give it authority. The only power we need is our own will. Okay? And now, some of you may say, well, isn't that arbitrary? I can just say anything is meaningful. But what Nietzsche wants to show is that this is how really value has always been. It doesn't really mean it's arbitrary. Now, we can think back to the Euthyphro dilemma, where Socrates says that if God created value and came up with no reason at all, then it's arbitrary. It means nothing. But what Nietzsche wants to point out is saying is that value has always just necessarily come from us. And it really does have value as long as we believe it has value. So go back to Plato. Plato had value in his life. It was the good. But where Plato forgot is that he gave the power. He is the one who willed the good and the theory of the forms into existence. Plato, the man, gave power and meaning to those ideas. What Plato was saying is those ideas gave meaning to him. No, he gave meaning to him, a human being. Aristotle, the unmoved mover, he willed that into being, and it really had meaning. The Christians, the Jews, Muslims, they willed the idea of God into existence. God doesn't give them meaning, they gave meaning to God. What happens is we are the creators, but we forget, we create this transcendental idea, and then we enslave ourselves to it and forget that we are the ones who are the creators of it. What the Übermensch understands is that very point, and that we can will new ideas of meaning into existence. Why? Because we can. This is what we should do. Okay? So we are creators. That is what the human being is. Now, he then goes on to say something else. He says, we should be yes-sayers. And what he means like that is, we should say yes to this life. We should be affirm life, life affirmers. Well, let's put it this way. We should affirm life, okay, and do not deny life. He says the Übermensch will understand that it's up to him or her to will into power their own meaning and what they believe. But he suggests this, that we should say yes to life. We should not will a life-denying philosophy. We should will a life-affirming philosophy. For example, here's a life-denying one. Nietzsche takes one of the biggest life-denying philosophies of the Western culture is Christianity. Because Christianity says this place here doesn't mean anything. It's just a test for the greater the greater eternity that you have, and that everything we're putting all our hope in something that comes after death for our soul to go into this, and we kind of push right now away. He says we are denying this life and saying it for this other one. The life we're in is this one, Nietzsche wants to point out. We shouldn't deny it. We shouldn't put it in something that is going to come after. We should concentrate on the here and now and find meaning here, not in something above and beyond us. Okay? And so that's what he says the Übermensch should affirm life in his philosophy. Say yes to something in the here and now, something that affects this world, the world we actually exist in. Okay? It's not just a world of mere appearance, as Plato wants to put it. It is the world. Okay? So we should say yes to life. Affirm it. Do not deny it. We are great creators, and meaning has always come from the human being. Even back when we were in the age of transcendence, it still was from the human being and always will. Now, Nietzsche also puts up this. I didn't give it to you, but in the second to last chapter, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he talks about the eternal return of the same. Okay, now some would translate it as the eternal occurrence of the same. Now, there are two well, before I say this, he says the Übermensch could will their entire existence through the eternal return of the same. Okay, so if you're an Übermensch, you can say yes to the eternal return of the same. Now, what is it? Now, there are two interpretations of it. I prefer the latter one, but we'll mention both of them. Some believe that Nietzsche thought the eternal return of the same was a scientific view, that he believed that there is a finite amount of matter in the world and that there's an infinite amount of time. Therefore, over an infinite amount of time, that matter would recreate itself over and over again in all the same ways infinitely, and that everything we do really would happen over and over again eternally in the same way. Okay? Now, there may be some truth to that because Nietzsche was into the kind of scientific ideas, but it seems he's more using it as a thought experiment or metaphor. And he's saying this: he says, look at you, if you think about it, in your life, is there one moment that you could pick and you could say yes to and live that moment over and over and over again through the eternal return of the same? What moment would it be? Do you have a moment like that? And of course, the point is that's really difficult to know. What is that moment? And even if I had to live this great moment I had over and over again, I'd get bored with it. I mean, it would happen again and again and again. And what Nietzsche wants to point out is that one moment also might not necessarily be just 1 second or 10 seconds or a few minutes or one day. Nietzsche is talking about what if that moment is your entire lifetime? So look at your entire life, the way you've been living it. Could you say yes to it through the eternal return of the same? Could you say, here's what I am. If I died today and everything I've done in my life, could I say yes to it, to relive it over and over and over and over again? And most of us might say no. And if Nietzsche says you say no, then what are you doing? Why aren't you changing something? We should be acting in this life as if we should live it through the eternal return of the same. The Übermensch is one who says yes to their life. And they say yes that they could live it over and over again, no matter what, through the eternal return of the same. Now, that doesn't mean the Übermensch is perfect. It doesn't mean he didn't make or she didn't make mistakes or doesn't have regrets. But can we live with those regrets and understand them and make ourselves better because of it? And so what I want to put here is this Superman isn't some type of ultimate being or a new transcendental God. Okay, this Übermensch is a normal person. Is a person. Is you. Can be you. Okay, and it doesn't mean they are perfect. Okay, it doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. But can they say yes to their life through the eternal return of the same? Okay, and so most of us can't. And if we cannot, what Nietzsche's trying to get us to do is to change your life. Then you still have time. You can always make a choice to change it. And this is what the Übermensch does. And it's really kind of, it's a difficult thing. Like I said, it can't, it's not something we should be able to take easily, all right? But this seems to be what the Übermensch does. Understands it creates life, creates meaning in it, and would say yes to the eternal return of the same, okay? Now, my question here is, for you, are there anyone that you might know that is an Übermensch, okay? So, let's take a look at the 20th century. Have there been Übermensches? Have there been, or has there been, there we go. Let's use correct English here, right? Has there been an Übermensch, okay, in the 20th, I'll put 21st century too, okay? tough to think about it. Someone who understands creates a life-affirming value. Now, many people, some will say, well, what about a critique here? Okay, and then we'll use this critique to kind of show what I think Nietzsche is also trying to say about the Übermensch. Some say, what about Adolf Hitler? Okay, he seems to be this very powerful, life-affirming, saying yes to his own life, or yes to his ideas, things like this. Could he be considered Übermensch? I think he is willing something to power and was a very powerful person. But what I think one of the main things we're forgetting here is the Übermensch, from what I read, is also a type of teacher. Okay, does kind of, when you see the Übermensch, it reflects on you and going, you know what, I want to be like that. But in no way is the Übermensch forcing the other to be just like them. The way we look at the Übermensch is, look how they have said yes to life and done their own thing. What I want to do is to say yes to my own life and do my own thing. It's an example, the Übermensch is an example I follow, but I don't have to follow their exact example. So if the Übermensch says yes to some new philosophy, it doesn't mean I have to say yes to that philosophy, but what it makes me do is go, you know what? I want to go out there and create my own philosophy like this Übermensch did. So it's never a forcing of the Übermensch's ideas on you, okay? But we learn from the Übermensch to want to be our own creator, our own things in the power. And the reason someone like Hitler, though he may have some of those qualities, is that he definitely had one transcendental way you were supposed to think, and you either thought it or you didn't. He was in a sense of, you could think what else would you want. There was a forcefulness of the Aryan race and the Aryan ideals, okay, on all others. As we see, that's what World War II was fought about. So I don't think necessarily he fits into it correctly. But I also want to point out this Übermensch cannot be perfect, okay? It's not like there's some great being, so there will always be some faults. One of the best persons I think is an example, though it still can be controversial, is someone like Martin Luther King, okay? MLK Jr., all right? Now, there's the Christian sense in here that Nietzsche may disagree with. But if we really look at it, okay, Martin Luther King was pushing and was someone who was kind of talking about changing life in the here and now. He might have had a Christian principle behind it, but what he was pushing wasn't that. He was pushing change for this moment and this time period. Our lived lives are for civil rights for all people. And we wouldn't be the same without someone like this. And it really, I think, is something great by that. And, you know, Martin Luther King, if we want to look at as a teacher, okay, I mean, he is a great person, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're atheist or not, you look at Martin Luther King and you respect something about him. You can take something from him. And the way Martin Luther King believed about his ideals is the way many people today want to believe about theirs. For me, I may not be Christian, but man, Martin Luther King was definitely a teacher for me. And he did not force his Christian values on me. But at the same time, there's something respect, and I see it. And I want to take on my philosophy like Martin Luther King took on his philosophy. That's what I really think shows him in that way. And also in one of his very last interviews that he ever gave, I believe only a few days before he died, was assassinated, they asked him, do you know what you're doing could get you killed? And he basically says, he found it worth it. That what he was doing, he understood that if he died to do it, he would be satisfied with that. And that's what I want to say is the eternal return of the same for Martin Luther King. That he was saying that no matter what has happened, and the things that I've been through, if I were to die today, I would do it all over again. I would do the same things. He affirmed his life through the eternal return of the same. And I think that's what's really important. And like I said, Martin Luther King wasn't perfect, okay? We all know about that Hoover brought up the tapes of Martin Luther King basically having an extramarital affair with his wife. And so we know he wasn't perfect. But that's not what we're saying. It's the way in which he shows us and what he does. Okay? So I think this is a really good example. Perhaps Gandhi, maybe Gandhi even more, because MLK learned from Gandhi as well. There are different others that you may think. Okay? Now, one other thing I want to kind of point out here about this is, let's make sure I got it all here, is, oh yeah, the final thing. All right. Sorry about this. Is also think about it. And Nietzsche isn't really saying that the eternal return is something that really is going to happen. You say, well, he doesn't believe in the transcendence, so how can you believe in something like this? But his point is this: whether we live the same lives over and over again, or we only live it one time, okay? We live it a bunch or one time, the importance of now is still on us. So if I have to live this now, and the here and now, over and over again, I realize, damn, this is really important. I better make sure I do it right because I'm going to have to live with this decision, and Groundhog Day style, right? Okay, maybe that's the case. But also it could be the case, maybe this is all I have, one time, I'm born, I die, and nothing ever happens again. And it's just this one moment. I then realized, you know, well, if all I have is this, well, damn, I better make something of it. I better do something about it. I better will this thing and really want to do what I'm doing. Why waste it on something? So Nietzsche's pointing out whether we do go through the eternal return of the same, or it is just a one-time thing we go through, either way, the burden should be on us to realize to make something of this life, to say yes to it. Don't deny this life. Say yes. Be a creator. Be who you are. And one of our most famous lines from Nietzsche is, you'll find it, I believe, right after the aphorism 126, will be, what does your conscience say? And it says, become who you are. Okay? And he doesn't, he literally means that. Become who you are, make who you are. Some say, well, that's so strange. I'm always going to become who I am, right? Okay? But he says, understand you have a choice to create and make your life, affirm your life, become who you are, make yourself. Okay? Don't give in to something else. Okay? Create your own existence. And all you have is this one. So make the best of it. Okay? And I think for now, that will end our lecture here as far as we can go in this very short time period we have. But once again, if you have any questions on the Übermensch, Nietzsche, on any of the ideas or any other existential ideas, please feel free to email me. And our next lecture will be on one of my favorite philosophers, is Martin Heidegger. Okay, and we'll have a lot to do to talk about him. Okay, but as for now, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next week. And this has been my